I'm hitting record right
Yeah.
now.
So that's Rajashri. That is Bikram. This is Bishnu Ghosh, and this is Yogananda. So, and Bishnu Ghosh and Yogananda were brothers, and
Hmm.
then Bikram was their protege, and
Hmm.
Rajashri, she built the entire pregnancy yoga series, which Kay teaches as well. So
Hmm.
that's what that is. I'm still trying to do. Ah, there we go. Okay. Bluetooth. No. Let's see. How do I connect here? Searching. I don't know if I have to just like turn this thing on. Kind of turn the bugger on.
And there should be settings in Riverside that will tell you which mic to connect to and stuff. Angela knows more about that stuff than I do.
Well, at first I got to connect it to the computer, I would guess.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
There is a version of Riverside I could get that would allow me to access the interviewee's computer to
oh
change
yeah.
all their settings. So I'm like, I can barely figure my own out.
Let's see. It is not finding this. I wonder. Oh wait. Oh, look at this. Look at this.
You have an adapter.
It's got like a. Oh, if I can get it out of the dang thing. How do I get it out of the hole? I can't. I can't get it out of the hole.
That's what she said.
Oh my gosh! But it's like really jammed in there.
Boy, that's what she said.
So this is exciting. I'm excited about this.
I think you and I have a high level of excitement for different reasons. But I don't know that for sure. They could be the similar reasons.
Ah, there we go. It's got a little thing, majigger. Hopefully it works. Hopefully it's just like, oh, that you want to do that? Yeah, let's do that.
Oh, and then it Bluetooths in.
Ah,
Perfect.
just popped right up.
Lovely.
Okay.
Oh, this is going to be good.
Okay, now let's see if it's
So,
Mike.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now we need to change it. Can we're recording? Don't see your mic.
Oh, really?
That
I have like right below my screen, I have mic. I can just change my mics.
yeah. It has it, but it's not like lit up.
Well, we can, you want me to stop the recording and see if that helps?
Well, maybe.
Uh-oh, something's happening. I can't hear you. This is looking good.
No. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, same
I
as
think I
before.
just hit mute.
Oh,
Okay. I guess it's not Bluetooth. Let's see. I gotta go to mic. Yeah, we might have to go out and then back in because it's at the beginning. It's like, what kind of thing do
you
you want
can,
to?
okay, dude, exit it and then click the link back
Yeah.
in. Yeah, and here, let me stop recording.
Okay.
Change guest
Popping
input.
out. Come.
Yeah, this is if you had that feature.
Ooh, I can stop. No, I'm going to keep recording.
So
Why not?
like this little drop down.
Hmm.
This is where you're at, and then when again, if you had that feature,
Hmm.
like, so
Mm-hmm.
you can change the mic.
And we're
Oh,
back.
okay. And is that sound a little better? Just a second.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Now let's just hope the thing doesn't die on me.
If it does, then we'll go back to a little more
We
echo.
actually got another one in here. So, okay, good deal.
Say again. Do you have multiple Riverside tabs open? It's telling me you do.
I
and
just
it's an
closed
issue.
them all. Yeah.
Okay.
We're
Yeah.
cavemen of the future drowning in our own technology.
We are cavemen entering the future.
Yes. Always.
What if you? Yeah, that mic probably isn't going to matter where it is if it's higher or lower. Perfect.
Okay.
Let's see here. Well, I want to make sure that we're both. Oh yeah, it's recording both. Okay. What do you think? Are we good?
Yeah.
This is my technical brain over here.
Hey, Angela.
He said, "Oh, here."
Hey.
I'm off camera. How are you today?
Good.
Good. Good.
Nice to see you in real life.
Yeah, same. Yeah, it's fun. This will be a much more fun conversation, I think, when you guys can see each other. Yeah, that'll be fun. More dynamic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right, well, have fun. I'll see you soon. I'm stuck. There we go.
Thanks for your help. All right.
It must be cold there. You're all bundled
The
up.
God manager says we're all set.
Okay.
Oh, can you flip the second breaker for the turn that heater off? It is Oregon. Do you remember what Oregon was like in the late winter, early spring?
Oh yeah.
It's actually, we got a good amount of sunshine right now, so
I miss that. That's actually one of the things I miss probably the most. It's just seasons.
Get the cleansing, purifying, greening.
You can't.
When I first
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, when I first moved here, like, seasonal affective disorder was something I looked into a lot. I had to change all the light bulbs in my house because I was so depressed. But of course, when you're dealing with all kinds of internal trauma, the lowering light does affect your chemical levels. And so now it doesn't affect me. Now I'm in a different kind of love in the rain.
Yeah.
It's just all wonderful.
Yeah. There's something you cannot replace, like a cold, rainy day wrapped around a cup of tea or a coffee in the morning. You can't find that in the Caribbean, right? It's a thing that only exists in those kind of climates, or like a nice dark porter on a cold night. Yeah.
My favorite thing to do is we have a whole living room set up on the back porch, like outside, just couches and stuff. And we put waterproof covers on them in the winter, so everything doesn't mold. But I like to sit out there under the big, heavy, like Pendleton blankets.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just snuggle up, and just the rain is coming down. We have a clear roof on the overhang, and there's just something profoundly peaceful in that.
Yeah.
And like embrace. It's like an embrace. The whole thing embraces you.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the thing I miss the most about. I mean, I love where we live, but it's that feeling right there. You don't get that here. You get all sorts of other cool stuff, but not that.
Exactly, and I'm looking forward to be able to experience both.
Yeah, because when you're doing that, that's storm season here. It's fun. It's like,
and that's the thing is I've been in India in the monsoon seasons, and Iraq in the monsoon season. Like, it's intense, that power. Like, talk about, I mean, if you believe in God, talk about seeing God.
Yeah.
The monsoon power.
Yep.
Oof.
Boom.
Yeah.
Were you there during the dust storm in Iraq?
Yep. I've got video of it, dude. A dust wall coming at us, and it's just like, what's gonna happen?
It's just black, and everyone's running and screaming.
And you still have to get to the chow hall and stuff, and so we were wearing full, like, chemical, our biological masks, like gas masks.
Yep.
That's the only way you could get through it.
Yep. That was fun. Okay.
I just blanked for some reason. Oh my goodness! Of course, you were there with me. Yep. Oh my goodness! Yeah.
That was fun.
Yes, I did experience.
I think I have a video somewhere too. But
that's a whole nother life conversation. What a time that was.
Oh yeah. My second kid, Ithaca, he's like 6 years old, and he's super into machines. And very recently, he's become very interested in specifically military machines and how they work, and like why they work and what they do. So it's been kind of tearing a lid off of some of his little, like, shelled realities, getting him out in the real world for sure. Stuff that I'm not sheltering him from on purpose, but I also haven't on purpose brought them up. So now they're both of them are listening, and we're talking a little bit more about world dynamics and how and why war exists, which comes back into God too.
Bro, I mean, I want to explore in depth every single topic that there is, and there's just so many. But to me, the most beautiful thing for people who have children is when they can just be honest with them and just say what you think, and let your kids make, like, you're going to mess your kids up, and you're not. I mean, just be you, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to model that.
Well, I think we all are. Well, hopefully we all are. Yeah.
You're accessing a lot of optimism right now, but yeah, I think we'd have a much healthier society if we all were.
Yeah.
I think maybe we're moving in that direction as a culture, though.
I think so too. I'm actually extremely optimistic for the future.
Yes.
Yeah.
That I feel like I can agree with you on.
Yeah. It might be.
And I think it's going to be because of people like us who are saying, to hell with the fear, to hell with everyone's feelings and opinions. I'm just going to be me.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to go through a kind of a dark time, and then it's going to a revolution, and it will come out.
Revelations. No.
Revelations. Maybe.
Well, since the topic of this conversation is why God anyway, revelation seems kind of appropriate.
Exactly.
And I think it's kind of cool. We have your history already, sort of like we've, mine. I mean, I just talk all the time on these things, whatever. And we've had a conversation. I had a conversation with Laurel that kind of like triggered this whole thing. My sister that kind of triggered this whole thing. And all of that is like, we don't need to put any of that history here because it's all accessible.
Right. Exactly. So that is good. So so actually the first time it kind of really got my gears rolling around is when you were actually talking to Kay. And you essentially at the end of her podcast, you asked something along the lines of, what is God? I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember exactly what it was. And her answer, once again, paraphrasing, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but it was something along the lines of, it's essentially like the energy that surrounds us and the energy that kind of glues the universe together. You should find her actual clip and snap it in there if you can, except this video.
Well, I have Angela as an editor, and she loves doing that kind of thing, so it's probably going to happen.
Yeah, that's better. Let her answer herself. But I remember at the time when I heard it, I remember thinking, that's not my answer anymore. So that would have been my answer. If you'd asked me 5 years ago, that would have been my answer. It's God is like the energy that kind of glues the world together. And it's all the coincidences and it's all of it's energy, essentially. And I would say over the last 5 years, I've had a little more time to think about it, and I've come out of that. And now I can pretty much just say that I'm an atheist. And but coming from like this whole like story arc of starting out as a person who like was raised as a Christian, and then but with no serious pressure on me, and then moving on to like a curious, interested teenager, and then just kind of letting it kind of brew in the back of my head, and then coming out essentially an agnostic for years and years and years, and then now kind of going back in and kind of asking more questions inside of that. So my goal in this whole thing is to like essentially offer a bridge from somebody who is a Christian, or who is not a Christian. Any God who is a religious person who believes in a God, and a bridge to see from the outside like another perspective, essentially, and hopefully not make myself look like an asshole in the process.
Except what other people see you as is their responsibility, not yours.
True that. So
I appreciate that you're willing to freaking dive into it.
Yeah.
And that's really where it has to start, is what, like, define God. Like, what are we actually, like, are we even talking about the same thing?
So I think the best way to I kind of have a way of tackling it in my head, of like talking about it, but I want to keep the door open. Like, all rabbit holes are open for exploring. But I think we have to split God and religion. They're the same thing often, but religion, when I say religion, I'm basically talking about what humans do because of a faith in a God, and God is what we perceive to be God or don't perceive to be God, right? Like this entity that people refer to as God. Does that make sense?
I think what I hear you saying is people see God as kind of like a conscious entity, like something that has a consciousness and a will and everything like that, and you're trying to make a division between. Okay.
No.
That's as far as my emotions get it.
I guess what I'm saying, let's define it as this. Like God is anything on this side, you have God is anything that anyone believes is God.
Okay.
Right? It doesn't have to be
so the spectrum of what is meant by the word God out of anyone's mouth. Got it.
And this over here is what people do in response to this idea. Okay? So
I get that concept.
Okay. So when I was like, I think kind of people have a story arc when it comes to God. And when you're a kid, and feel free to jump in here, but I think for most people, when you're a kid, you're either exposed to it or you're not exposed to it. And there's a certain amount of pressure that's put on you as to how important this concept is, right? If you weren't ever exposed to it, then you're just going to explore it later, because humans are curious things, and you're going to learn about God, and you're going to learn about religion. So you're going to have to explore it. Well, maybe you won't, but most people do end up kind of exploring that path. If you're in a high pressure environment, it essentially means that you're going to dig into one religion early on, and then possibly in a later time start exploring other religions. And or if, from my perspective, I was in a religion, but it wasn't really pushed on me. So I think because I didn't get super into this religion at the beginning, which was, as we refer to, like vanilla Christian, I was allowed to explore it a little bit earlier, kind of on my own mind, I think, than most people. So does that resonate with you?
Very much so. And what my brain was doing that whole time is I was thinking how the contrast between you and me and Hargabend, that's who came to mind, because it's like I was raised in an extreme Christian cult environment, like the extreme of what you're talking about, of it gets hammered into you.
Right.
You were kind of like a little bit soft. You kind of had it, but it wasn't extreme, and you were able to question it as a teenager and all that stuff. And then Hargabend is like basically steeped in like kind of the more Eastern mindsets of where all paths lead to the same place, basically.
Right. Exactly.
Ish. So and so that's what was happening in my mind. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
and where we have all come to is so different because of that. But and that makes me actually interested to juxtaposition your upbringing versus my upbringing, where it brings both of us to in our perspective of God and everything today. Because I'm not a Christian, but I believe in God, and it's so weird.
Yeah, I can totally understand that, and that's kind of why I wanted to separate the religion from the God, because there was a long time in my life that I was not a Christian. I was not any religion, but I believed in God, right? So I was, for years, what most people would refer to as agnostic, like a person that believes in God but doesn't believe in any of the religions.
Sure.
Right. So when I was a kid, right off the bat, I remember being in Sunday school and seeing like what I would like contradictions, essentially, in the teachings. And I mean, they're kind of everywhere within Christianity, right? And they, for instance, God is like this merciful, like, person who wants humans to, be the best, or at least that's what they tell you. But then you read like the Old Testament or parts of the Old Testament, and he's just decimating entire cities and flooding the whole world and killing everyone off and doing things that you're like, what? It was confusing as a kid. So I just, at the very beginning, like I was like, well, I'm just gonna like not make a decision on this. That's what my childhood was, and there was no one that kind of like tried to like curb those ideas and kind of stomp them into like a solid position in my brain. So it just kind of floated. And then when I became a high schooler, I became well, I'd say I became very interested in stories. I was really into literature. I was really into all of these things. And I dove back in to religions just because now it was like, okay, now this is a thing that I actually maybe should figure out. Like, is this a thing that is worth spending time on and thinking about, or is it a thing that I can ignore, essentially? And I ended up reading most of the Bible. I think I read the whole Bible, both versions of it. And then I went on to read texts from Hinduism, Judaism, Buddhism, and multiple different religions. I want to point out that I am not an expert on any of those religions, but this is just from my own personal lay experience. And then after I went through those, I started getting really interested in, like, we'll say, more primitive religions. Primitive is probably not the word, like polytheistic religions and
maybe older
and animistic religions, right? So,
yeah,
and those are rife with beautiful stories, right? Gorgeous, crazy, interesting stories about how things work and how things move and why, all the whys of the world, right?
The lore and the imagery.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's also, you can, once you kind of pull back and you start looking at all these religions, and we're talking about religions, we're not talking about God right now, we're just talking about
Correct.
religions. Once you kind of pull back, you can see that these animistic religions like kind of morphed into polytheistic religions. Like the earliest religions were like, this happens because of, right? And then the polytheistic religions are, this happens because of, and these gods are essentially on Jerry Springer, and they're like, it's essentially a soap opera, right? And then those polytheistic religions often essentially kind of morph into these monotheistic religions. I mean, if you look at Christianity, like most of the celebrations that are in Christianity are actually pagan religious holidays, and they slapped a new name tag on it. They changed the way things happened, but realistically, they're kind of just mirroring or morphing into a new religion, right? Does that
and Christians, most Christians would use different verbiage. They would disagree with you in principle, but most Christians would agree with the fundamentals that it was that like the super conservative, the super conservative Christians, like from the circles I was raised in, won't celebrate any Christian holidays because they're pagan holidays. And everyone gives a nod to that because you got to harmonize peoples as you take over other lands and stuff like that. But yes, I think that's generally something we can agree on. Yes.
So, and it doesn't matter if you don't agree. It actually doesn't really matter. It's if you don't believe that, that's fine. But
it is
my personal
objectively true.
What's that?
It's objectively true if you read history books.
Yeah, exactly. So I kind of broke religion, and we can pretty much say all religions, they essentially have a few tasks within a society. And the first task is like general rules of how to live, right? And they're pretty much across the board. Almost every religion, or at least every major religion, kind of follows these same things. Like don't kill people, don't steal from your neighbor, don't all the don'ts, basically the 10 commandments, right? Like don't be an asshole, essentially. And because they are basically true of all religions, I personally don't consider them to actually be a feature of being religious, of a religion. I actually consider them a feature of being a human. I think that religions just took them and kind of wrapped them into their own religion to create rules of success for the people who were in those religions. So, and certain religions have, like, there are other rules. Like, for instance, like Shemitah, is it Shemitah? I think I have it written down somewhere. Yeah, Shemitah, which is a sabbatical year of like Judaism, right? In Judaism, there's a Shemitah, which is a sabbatical year. And so essentially a farmer is supposed to take the 7th year off, right? But it's not the farmer, it's the land. The land itself has to take the 7th year off, right? So you work crops, you work the land for 7 years, and on the 7th year you rest, much like God did, right? In the Bible. But if you back off, that's like, that makes total sense within the context of the religion. However, it also makes complete sense in the context of science and the way that soil works, right? If you farm every single year, you destroy the capability of the soil to create new stuff, right? And so giving it a rest year and letting it just be dirt allows the ground to not be fallow on the future years. Right? You have other rules like don't eat pork, right? So a lot of religions don't eat pork. And the reason, and there's a whole lot of reasons within those religions of why not eat pork, but also from an outside objective scientific perspective, pork is a much more dangerous meat to consume, especially if you're not cooking it, especially if it's in unclean environments, especially if you don't have the capabilities to test the temperature of it before you serve it to people, right?
Yes.
And people get sick and they die, right? So these are like rules that I think that religions create to essentially make people successful, make the people within that religion successful. So that's the first thing that I think that, and there are lots of other, like ways that happens, but that's what I think the first objective of a religion is for. Right? From a top-down, a reason that people create a religion. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
It's kind of like before modern society where we had writing, printing press, books, a way to transmit information exactly to people. All that you had was verbal tradition handed down. And how could that not turn into religion?
Right.
But the purpose is that we have to pass on. How do you farm? How do you take care of your hygiene? How do you take care of your relationships?
Exactly.
Like all the things that are important.
Yeah.
Keep yourself safe, keep yourself reproducing,
Well, and you said hygiene. So wudu is the Islamic act of bathing before prayer. So you have to bathe yourself in the river before prayer. I mean, look at baptism, right? There's so many things that are around washing yourself and cleansing yourself and just keeping yourself clean, and that are all, once again, the things that killed people in the early times of humanity, right?
Yes.
So that's what I think. The number one reason for these religions is like this community aspect of teaching people to succeed in life, right? The second rule, in my opinion, of a religion is to have a story, right? So I think that it is a deep down intrinsic need for humans to have a story, a beginning and an end of things, right? And I mean, you think, like, I have kids. My kids all day long are asking me questions that actually require an immense amount of scientific knowledge to answer, right? My son asked me the other day, why is it that fire makes light? And I said, well, because there's things burning in it. And he goes, yeah, but what actually happens to make the wood turn into light? And I was like, whew.
Whoa.
And I'm like, I don't know the answer to that. I'm going to find it for you, right? But there's a deep down need inside of me to say, well, because it is, right? And I can easily see, if I was a religious person, to just go, well, because God made it happen, right?
Yes.
And so that,
especially if you didn't have Google,
right?
And
exactly,
encyclopedias, and now Chat GPT to understand a little bit more. Yeah.
So
God,
I think
God.
for a long time it was, and because humans love these oral stories, and these oral stories can be embellished, and this is like, if you think about, like, everything that's our life, are the clothes we wear, where we live, what we eat, what we drive, all of them are a story we're telling to the world, right? Humans are stories. We love stories. We have to have stories in order to, it's what we are is a story, right?
Yeah.
And if you look,
I could not agree with that more.
Yeah. If you look,
we are made of stories.
Exactly. If you look at religions, all of them, they're all just stories, right? So animistic religions are, like why does the sun go across the sky? Well, because a chipmunk picked it up and carried it across the sky. Or and also with that comes the origin of the world, right? And the origin of people, and that is a beginning. You have to have a beginning of every story, right? So
yes,
there's
otherwise, how can you understand any of the middle or have a hope of knowing the end if you don't know the beginning? Yes,
exactly. So there's a group that's like an animistic religion called the Ainu. I'm probably saying that incorrectly, which are like northern Japanese, like Russian Inuit peoples. Okay, and they are an older people, and the religion basically is, and I'm this is what I know of it, but from what I understand of it, the way that the earth was formed was it was just a vast ocean open. These are island people. A vast open ocean, right? And a giant, a god, the god, reached down to the bottom of the ocean and picked up a wad of muck and held it, right? And held it steady. And then out of the water climbed all of the animals and the Ainu people, right? And the god held it and kept it there, and that's Earth. That was the whole creation of life, right? And it makes total sense for any island person that totally makes sense, right? It's a story of how we were created and where we're going, right? And every religion has one of these origin stories, whether all of them have an origin story. Even, I mean, there's a few like
even atheism.
What's that?
Even atheism.
Well, that's true. Atheism doesn't have a story because atheism doesn't. Well, I mean, to my knowledge, but I don't.
Well, we'll chase that down.
Yeah,
here,
you're talking about. Yeah, we will. I'm all about it. Okay.
Because every religion has a story. Humans have to have stories. We're made of stories.
You're right. You're right. Well, it does. In my opinion, it has a story, but we'll get to it.
Yes. Perfect.
So let's see. Where do I go from here? So early on, all of the contradictions and the way that these religions worked, I learned like through the vengeful gods creating wars. And it's not just Christianity. Basically, every religion in the world, except for a few, like Buddhism doesn't talk about going to war, but it has problems as well. And
and it talks a lot about what happens when someone goes to war with you.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. So,
and I mean, read the Bhagavad Gita. That is the entire thing. Is a discussion that happens in the eve of a battle between two armies. Like,
yep.
And could there be a more basic, Hindu text? So.
Right. So one of the things that actually killed me the most in all religions was the idea of original sin. And almost all religions have some version of original sin. So Judaism and Christianism and Islamism, they all stem from the same books. They all are very closely related. They all think about original sin. differently, but they all have kind of their own version of original sin. Okay.
And they all kind of agree that they have a similar origin.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like Judaism is Christianity 1.0, Christianity is Christianity 2.0, and Islamism came a little bit afterwards as Christianity 3.0. They all use often the same text, different emphasis on different texts, but they're all, I mean, there's going to be so many Christians and Islamist people and Jewish people that are going to hate that statement, but
exactly,
they all are coming from the same text.
From an outside perspective, that's what it looks like as we read the texts and the histories. Right. But yeah, and that doesn't take away their perspective of themselves either.
Yeah, and again, I'm not an expert on these, but
no.
And then you have like
thank God, how boring would that be?
Exactly. And then you have like Hinduism and Buddhism. They both have a caste. They both believe, well, like Hinduism is a caste system, right? Which is essentially original sin, right? You were born with it, and now because of that, you are going to clean filth for the rest of your life because of how you were born, right? Go ahead.
My understanding of the caste system, though, is that was introduced through colonialism. Like that wasn't a Hindu thing until we brought it to them, basically.
Oh, okay. See, that might be incorrect.
I could be wrong.
Okay. So, but as it stands now,
okay,
it has a caste system. I don't know the origin of the caste system or where it came from. But they do, and
doesn't take away from your point,
right? And the whole idea of reincarnation on its own right, it goes back to like what you did in a previous life affects what you are today, right? And that in its own, that its own is an original sin, right? Or
I see that.
The only caveat is you could be an original like winner. I guess what's the opposite of original sin? Like what's the person that's born into royalty? I don't know what the name of that type of person is in those religions are, but they have a god or a demigod or whatever. Yeah, you're closer.
You have a heavenly origin, basically.
Exactly.
But the earthly origin is original sin,
right?
Like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that one is the one that was what killed me. Religions for me, and I'm like the one I understand the most is Christianity, and to break down why it killed it so much is you have the 7 sins, right? You in Christianity, how did man become a sinful creature? How did original sin start? Right? Eve ate the apple in the Garden of Eden. The fruit of knowledge, right? And with that, she started to lust, right? Which means she had sexual desire. She had gluttony, indulgence, right? Which meant she wanted the act of enjoyment, greed, the want to improve your life.
And something you don't have.
Right. The sloth.
Or aren't allowed to have.
The sloth, which is what allows you to rest when it's needed, right? Wrath and envy, just feelings, right? You have feelings now. And then pride, which is the one that has the most writing on the wall. Like the sin is being proud of yourself, right? And I think of these things, like that basically tells me that religion, that one specifically, but man cannot, like the act of being a man is wrong. Like it is bad.
And you're saying man as in mankind.
Yeah. Man qua man.
Yeah. Yes.
Is not being himself. Like you're saying that me being those are the things that I think of as being human. Being proud of yourself, having feelings, wanting to rest when you need it, having desires, those are like that's essential human. That's what a human is, in my opinion, right? And
wanting to lie to protect yourself,
exactly.
like yeah.
So what I saw as a high schooler when I was looking back on these is religions are essentially like they are trying to make man human, make a human not natural, unnatural, right? To make them, and with it comes guilt, right? It's like a power thing over the top of any person that believes it. And you can't escape that guilt. There's no escaping that guilt, not while you're alive, right? You can give everything to the church, to the idea of a religion, and it will never be enough until you are dead, right?
Do you think that the religion is causing the guilt, or do you think the guilt is causing the religion?
No, I think it's a religion that's causing the guilt.
Okay. I mean that would be an interesting rabbit trail, because to me we're made out of stories, and when you're trying to figure out what the hell is going on and you have no idea and all you have is these verbal stories and nothing really makes sense, and it starts to turn into this lore and imagery and stuff like that, the guilt is I mean, it's kind of like the original sins, kind of like the 7 deadly sins. It's the guilt is the thing that is pushing us to better ourselves. And the guilt can't help but create a religion around it that says, hey, you can't figure it out, and this feeling is too big for you, but don't worry.
So
in the next life, God, whatever it is,
So now I'll throw it back at you. You're not a Christian anymore, but you do believe in God. Do you feel?
And I wouldn't say I'm not a Christian.
Yeah.
I am a Christian. Would not necessarily say, like, a conservative Christian wouldn't say I'm a Christian, but to me, Christian, not Christian, like, Christianity is part of my makeup. So how can I say I'm not a Christian? But that's weeds, dude.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you feel guilt when you desire something? When you lust?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Is that
not
because
anymore.
You have broken, because you're not under a religion? Or is that because, like, why? Why don't you? Because if the question you asked was, do you feel guilt because of the religion, or did we create a religion because of the guilt? If you don't feel guilt now without a religion, would you create a religion to feel guilt?
I think that religion was so important in my life because of the intense level of guilt I was raised with. Probably because of the religion. I mean, from your perspective, it would be that way. But what it feels like to me is that there came a point where I said, I'm no longer a Christian. And I walked away from it completely. But the reason I did that is because I have a super conservative family who the Bible that they read tells them that if somebody calls themselves a Christian and commits X, Y, Z behaviors, you're not allowed to associate with them or even eat with them. And I didn't want to put them in that position, and I didn't want to have to walk through that also on top of everything else. And so I was just like, fuck it. I'm not a Christian. Very quickly after that, I realized that that's not the answer either. Still walking through intense, mortifying guilt all the way through this. And then I started to explore with Wicca, because that's it. And this would be very offensive to a lot of people, but there are so much similarities between Christianity and Wicca. It's like you took all of the animistic old religions and then kind of like swirled it in with Christianity, and then here comes Wicca. And how could it not draw me? And I have the candles and I had books of like, how do you do these observation rituals for the seasons and all this other stuff, just because I want to figure it out too. And this guilt is still here, and I know that Christianity, as I understood it, doesn't make sense, but I don't know what else makes sense. Walking through all this stuff, experimenting, like talking to everybody, every perspective, every religion, the guilt trajectory was my own, basically the connection of the whole thought process up here, the thing that just keeps me safe from bears and helps me figure out how to whatever get through life. And whatever subconscious shit is down here, as those things became more and more able to talk to each other and not be afraid of each other, because I was raised to believe that the heart is desperately wicked above all things, who can know it, deceitful above all things and desperately wicked, who can know it. And so I'm like, I got to stay the fuck away from this thing. So then as I came more and more into my body and into accepting myself and my sins, my desires and my dishonesties and my cheatings and just like everything that a human does, because they're just trying to figure out who they are and what they want and why do I have these, impulses and stuff, that guilt level guilt level has had a trajectory of decreasing that has nothing to do with all the different religious things I was playing with and stuff. And now I come to full circle where it's basically the marriage of religion and science instead of the religion and animism, where I'm reading all like quantum physics. To me, I cannot resist anyone that's talking about how physical matter is just light particles spinning around each other having fun.
Yeah.
The guilt, to me, the guilt and the religion, like the guilt feels like it causes the religion more than the other way around to me. But that's been my experience.
Okay, that's in. So you think that if we let's for a moment let's for a moment imagine a world where none of the religions, like someone clicked their fingers and all of the religions and the memories of religion for all people across the entire world just disappeared, and they were just going about their life every single day. Do you think, two questions. Question one, do you think the amount of guilt that happened in the world would increase or decrease? Number two, if we at the same time, would those people get together and go, oh, we have to figure something out, where are we going to put all this guilt? Would they create a religion because of that?
Okay. So answer to question one is I think that guilt would almost disappear. Like, I don't see how it could possibly not at least decrease by 75 to 95%.
Yeah.
Question number two. Can you restate it? Because
like, if that world existed where there was no religion,
yeah,
in a world where we had all the science that we have today to give us like more origin stories than they had when they were rubbing sticks together, would we now need to create a religion to put in a place to put our guilt? Okay. Would we create a religion for the purpose of putting our guilt somewhere?
Well, okay, so religion disappears. Now you have the person who's like has all these crazy things that they just are like trust, like basically they confine themselves to safety, to moral safety in a religion. Like, I know people who feel like without religion, everybody's just going to go start killing and raping everybody. Like, that's just what humans are going to do.
Yep.
And I don't believe that's true, but I do believe that religion is, at least before the modern age, I don't know what's going to happen from here, but I think that in past history, religion has been critical, key to social order, to social, just being able to function in society, which without society, humans can't survive because we don't have fur and claws and teeth and all that other stuff. We have to have each other. Right. And to me, that's the role that religion has played up until now that would cause absolute chaos. But I don't know that that's true, because how can you imagine, like, religion is such a core part of every single culture, every human almost on the face of the planet. Does that feel like an answer to the question?
To some degree. So you weren't talking about guilt, but you were talking about like a functional role of religion.
What we're talking about is where guilt's gone.
Right. So
that's why it's a little hard for me to answer.
you brought in morals, right, into
Yes.
that. And I would say that this is going to raise some heckles, but I would say that the most immoral people that ever existed did it with religious reason, for religious reasons. The majority of wars that have happened in the world have happened directly because of religion. You could make an argument that racism is based out of religion. You could make an argument that any layering of people, anybody being higher or lower than people, comes out of religion. But when it comes, like, the reason is that religion has a righteousness, right? The word self-righteous comes out of religion, right? It's a man, in my opinion, it's a man-made thing that has created an I am better than you in all sorts of aspects, from money to power to region of the world to what book you're holding in your hand to what God you believe in, right?
Or don't.
And I personally believe that none of these gods, whether it's the bearded guy in the sky or the many-armed Hindu gods or Zeus or Thor or Odin, all of them, I don't believe in any of them. To me, it's essentially like people arguing over who has the coolest imaginary friend. It's like two 5-year-olds arguing about it, right? But the thing is they're not 5-year-olds. They're people that are running giant communities, and they are fighting each other, and they're killing each other. You think of all the jihads, all the crusades. You could essentially tie almost every war back into a religious war. Every war that has existed.
Orlo, I feel like we're having to do a further division here then, because now we're talking about the difference between people who consider that, who are part of a religion because that's who they are and whatever, and people who are self-righteously believe they have a mission to convert, a mission, like it's like they have a mission from God. So it's like it's like the fundamentalists versus the people who are just walking in their paradigm to try to do the best they can.
I can see what you're saying.
Okay.
I mean, I've definitely known people who are like super quiet Christians, that, like my grandma. She was a believer, and she would never talk about God. She just is a person who is a believer. She was a Christian, right? But I wouldn't say it's the giant, far out, crazy like parts of religions either, because we're actually a lot of it in the last couple of centuries is straight up politics, right? And
well, politics it is religion. Like,
it's exactly.
Look at politics. It's religion. It's a game show. Every time that I look at a news headline or catch a flash of a news report on the TV, I feel like I'm watching Hunger Games.
Exactly.
Like, it feels like I'm like, this is surreal. I feel like I'm in Hunger Games right now. None of this is real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you talk about politics, especially politics and religion holding hands, they have forever, right? Politics was holding hands in Greece, right?
Yeah. The whole church and state.
Exactly. Yeah. So when you're talking about that, we're talking about popularist religion.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So,
and if anything, it's less that way now than it used to be.
Yeah.
At least overtly. At least that's what it says.
Yeah.
I don't buy it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't either. But I mean, it's Christian. Well, religions are changing all the time. They're ran by people. They're ideas that are created by people, and those ideas are going to change, just like the people inside of them are going to change, right? But I don't know if you can make a division between like the fundamental, like the hardcore Christians, and like grandma, right? Because they both, like, if put on a spot, I love my grandma, right? But if put on in a situation where she had to make a decision, she would probably go with the Christian one, right? Even if the decision, I mean, I can't think of like a specific situation right now, but she would most likely follow her religion, right? Whatever.
Even if it takes away from somebody else's sovereignty?
I mean, I think.
See, that's the thing is,
I think so.
Like now going back to my conversation with Laurel and the questions she was asking me, like she's going to show up to that and she's going to say how she actually feels, but she's not going to she's not going to fight me. Like she's not going to try to like force me, like take away my sovereignty, my autonomy, because she has respect for me as a human.
Right.
Maybe that's the difference. The people who have respect for other people as an equal human to them.
Yeah.
That's okay.
But here's the problem with religion is it creates a separation of people, right? If you're a Christian, even if you're not a door knocker, like you have in your head, like just there's an I'm going to heaven and you aren't, right? There's an I'm going to be a higher caste system on the next level and you're not, right? There's that exists. Whether you're a quiet, cute little old person that just quietly believes in God, or in a Christian religion, or someone who is an aggressive type of person.
I believe that you and I are people who are always trying to see ourselves from the outside. Right. And we're always trying to recognize our own ego and our own hubris and our own narcissism, which is just a human trait. Like it's all we're all on the spectrum.
Right.
But tell me honestly that not in your conscious mind, because you're working, that's where you work through things, but in your subconscious, in deep down, tell me that you don't believe that you can do it better than the next person, that that what you have is to me, that's part of the human condition.
No, yeah, I do.
And you can be aware of it and become more functional because you're aware that you feel this way. But I think every human feels that way.
Right. No, I do. But
even the ones that are very self-deprecate, like that live in like they just shame themselves and all this stuff, that's just a mask to hide their confusion. Like they also believe.
I actually don't trust people that are really aggressively self-deprecating. Personally. Okay, let me rephrase this.
Well, if they don't trust themselves, then how can you trust them?
Yeah.
I mean,
so let me rephrase the question, rephrase it in just a little. So the trolley problem, right? You pull this side, the trolley runs over one person. This side, the trolley runs over 5 people, right? And you're the only person that's at the switch, and here comes the trolley. But the difference is, in this scenario, you're a Christian. One side of the track is a Christian. One side of the track is any other religion, right? You have to pull the switch. Which one? Where are you going to pull it, right? And the only knowledge that you know about them is that they're a Christian, or they're not, or they're whatever religion the other one is. Based off of that, what are you going to do? So that's all I'm trying to say, is that it creates a division. It's a man-made division that was created by. And that division affects people on a day-to-day basis. That's it.
When you say man-made, do you mean like there was somebody who masterminded this? Is like, how can I make this?
Well, this is something we should talk about. Do you believe that any of the religions that exist, Christianity, Buddhism, any Hinduism, do you think they were created by the God that created those religions, that those religions worship?
We have to define the word God.
So, do you think that
I would say
Christianity was the religious aspect of Christianity, the church and all the people that have followed Christianity since its inception? Do you think that the great bearded man in the sky made that?
I don't think there is a great bearded man in the sky as it is perceived. And that's kind of interesting, because I think of the Christian God as the bearded God of justice or judgment.
Okay.
And he has many faces, and some of his faces are mercy, but he's still the bearded God of judgment.
Okay.
That's just how I think of it. And there is no bearded God of judgment. There is nobody out there that is gunning for you because you're not doing it right. Like, to me, God, in the beginning, God, like, that's how the Bible starts. And it makes a profound sense to me because there was a beginning. Even if there wasn't, even if the beginning was the beginning of the next cycle, however you look at it, at some point, from a physical, three-dimensional physical perspective, you have to look from a perspective of a beginning. There's no way we cannot do that.
We're going to come back to that.
Go ahead.
We're going to come back to that in a bit.
Okay. So in the beginning, God, energy, whatever you want to call it. To me, the word God, like, I use the word God because I live in a culture, in a society, in a world that the word God, you have to use it. Like, people don't know what to do. You have to spend all of your time defining energy to even start having a conversation. So I just say God, whatever.
Fine.
But whatever that entity is, and a little bit tongue in cheek, I look at it as one light photon. To me, that's what God is. It's a light photon that exists in a infinite dimension. Like, we exist in 3 dimensions.
Right.
And I believe we actually exist observably in 4 dimensions personally, because I've been reading a lot about the space-time and the space-time field and the black holes and planets making weight and gravity and all that stuff is so fucking fascinating. But to me, that's God. God is whatever the particle is that is spinning around and making all this up. And if you're an infinite being, even if being doesn't even mean consciousness to me, it means you exist in whatever capacity. One light photon that is an infinite being has the ability to create all of this easily, because infinity means you can do everything at once. That's what infinity means. So to me, that's God. So in the beginning, God, and therefore that light photon started spinning around and doing all this stuff. And maybe it had already been doing it, and maybe quantum physics, maybe there just was no consciousness around there to resolve it. Maybe it's always been there in abstract form, everything that could be being. And then consciousness starts to evolve and starts to observe it. And because of the nature of God, that's what makes it resolve into 3 dimensions, into 4 dimensions, into 5, 6, 7, 12, 24. It just depends on where you're at. We're right here. A rock is going to see it different than we do. A creature that lives in a 2-dimensional world is going to see it different than we do. And I believe that they're there. Do they have the same consciousness? I don't know. So therefore, hopefully, like, that's a very brief explanation of why I would answer your question. Yes, I think that God created religion, and I think that God created politics, and God created everything that's happening. And there is no, like, politics is just a bunch of people that don't know what's going on and doing the best they can with what they have. There's not a person there's not a shadow government. There's not a shadow mind out there that's saying, Illuminati, okay, if we spin this top here and spin this top here, then we're going to be able to create this war over here that's going to create this famine over here, and then we're going to dominate the world. Right. That just doesn't exist. There's a lot of people that look at themselves that way. They're so... The ego is their protection. Narcissism is their protection. They don't know different. And so they believe that they're that type of person, but they're not. They're just a human that has no fucking clue what's going on.
Well, yeah. So you believe that God essentially created the universe, essentially.
Is the universe. Created the universe out of itself.
But God created that God created mankind.
Can I give one more?
Yeah, go ahead.
One more little definition there. God didn't say, and first day's coming up, let me start creating. God created because that's what God is. Didn't have a choice. God isn't conscious. Like, to me, God is not will. Like, I have that little story I wrote, whatever, that's creation's will, where God is creation.
Right.
And then eventually creation is going to create something to push back against. Will is formed, and then will starts to go through all this stuff because it has to grow up and realize that it's also creation, and then you got the religions and the politics and the wars and everything, and it's all meant to be because it's all a trajectory of the inevitable evolution of of God observing itself, becoming aware of itself. And I say becoming because I live in a finite dimension. I can't process not having a beginning and an end. But ultimately, I actually don't believe there is a beginning and an end. I just don't know how that works. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. But logically, that's what I believe is true. And I'll believe it when I'm out of the being bound to this dimension. But
right. So, but going back to the original context was religion, and we'll say all religions, were they created by this entity or non-entity, this force?
Not consciously.
Not consciously.
But just by virtue of that's the only thing that could have possibly happened.
Right. Okay.
That's what it means to be God.
So,
this is just what to be God at this point in time, in this point in time like space and space like space means Christianity.
Right. But so I mean I can see how that and that God is man-made can both exist. Right?
Correct.
Like
exactly.
the God you're talking about, this is essentially a backdrop, or is everything, and
it's the story of everything.
Yeah, and so in that case, you could say, just like I can make a lie right now, right? I'm standing on the moon. I lied just now, right?
I'm gullible. That's interesting.
Exactly. So
how did you get there?
So I do believe in truth, though, or at least the ones that I feel are true, right? And
that when you take a breath, oxygen will be available for your red blood cells?
Exactly. Right. So I also believe that religions are essentially a lie. They're a fictitious story that were created for the purpose of helping people, usually, to succeed in life and to give them a place to start. And I think that since their inceptions, there's been a lot of confusion as to how like the original context of them, and now people through, I mean, the chosen people, right? People take like words that are in these old texts and they say, oh, we are the chosen people, and therefore you are not the chosen people, and therefore war, famine, racism, blah, 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 right? So from my context, I guess even fairly early on, I was like, if I'm going to do this religion thing, then I can't choose any of these religions, right? And I can't choose any of the gods that are of these religions, because they all are contradictory and they are all against what I consider to be human. Okay? What I consider to be essential to being a man. Like, other people can do it, but if I want to live my best life, I will not follow any of these religions. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and what I'm hearing is a binary perspective where it feels to me, and I'm just because why not cut to the chase? It feels to me like you're falling into the same trap where you're saying, I'm going to reject these religions, but what if the religions actually are describing something that's real, just not what they think it is? What if every single person that looks out of their eyeballs is seeing what is actually there? And when somebody prays to God and speaks in tongues and the sick is healed, that's actually happening, and something is really happening there. And so why do we have to reject it?
Well,
why not say, yeah.
I didn't reject it. I became an agnostic. I became a person who believed in God, but didn't believe in the religion, right? So I didn't reject the entire idea. I rejected the man-made portion of it.
But you have now. That's what I hear you saying.
We'll get there in a second.
Okay, so okay, go ahead.
So I kind of we started talking about the third thing. I want to cover one more base as far as religion goes. the thing, and the reason I want to cover it last is it ties in to like being an agnostic. This is a flaw, in my opinion, a mental like reasoning flaw that carried through for me. And so because of the stories, because of the way that of who God is in these religions, it is an answer for everything, right? It is so when you're a guy rubbing sticks in the primordial forests, and your kid comes up and says, "Why does the fire make light?" You say, "Because God," right? It's essentially like saying, "Because I said so." But now we're taking it where it's now external and it's aimed at this thing, right? And for millennia, we have taken that and used it for everything. Why does the sun go across the sky? Why is there water? Why is water wet? Why does anything? And if you want to be lazy, you can say, well, because God, right? And it's essentially like saying, because I said so. And it destroys the curiosity that comes with it, right?
Does it?
Well,
or does it explain the things that nothing that we know to this point can explain?
Well,
is it the story for the people that are made of stories to process, to continue living?
Tell that to Copernicus, who was trying to explain the opposite and was killed because of it.
Well,
because
and Aristotle and like
right. The thing is we wanted to believe that we took it to such a degree that when someone was curious about it, we killed them because they were curious about it, because it made our brains go, ow, right? It made the way that we think about the world hurt, right? And we didn't just do it with Copernicus. That history is rife with examples of people being destroyed or shamed or all sorts of things because they were curious about something and did something, as opposed to a religion or the way that we think about things because of a God, right?
But bro, that's true for religious, for non-religious, for animistic, for everything through all recorded history. Humans have, this is how humans process. This is how they grow. This is how we process everything we can't understand as we come away. Because think about, like, assuming you believe in evolution, all that stuff, because a huge part of my life, that wasn't even a concept that could even possibly be true. Now, I'm completely agnostic about it. And I'm just like, obviously evolution makes sense. Like it just makes sense. But then there's also that Christian part of me that's just like, it doesn't make sense to the extent that we try to explain everything with it.
Yeah, well,
like you don't get prebiotic soup or whatever.
Right.
You don't get soup that turns into this unless there is something that happens outside of anything we've seen before.
Right.
But and millions of years, trillions of years, that to me is the same thing as saying God.
Science is flawed, right? I mean, that's
correct.
The definition.
Well, because humans
science
are flawed. Science is not flawed.
No, science is
human
flawed.
thinking is flawed.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the idea of science is to be flawed, to look at,
because it's also religion, because it's in the minds of humans that are made of stories.
Sure, but science says, hey, well, I'm going to try this for a while. Oh, that didn't work. I'm going to try this for a while. Oh, that didn't work. Well, let's try this for a while, right? It does that until it finds a path that makes the most sense. And the one that makes the most sense is also wrong, right? But at some point, we'll go, oh, you know what? This isn't quite right. Let's aim it just a little bit off to the right, and keep going, right?
And it's the problem with the God concept or the billions of years concept is that if it is easily modifiable, if you can tweak it to fit anything that happens, then it's not a good argument. It has to explain in a way that if that explanation is not right, it's completely wrong. I'm messing that up because I am so bad at science, but I've been,
Wait, can you restate it again?
Okay, let me see if I can remember. I wish I remember what book I was. There's a lot of books that this is in, but it's the concept that an argument that is easily adaptable to any like God, for instance, the argument of God you can apply no matter what happens. Like, well, God. But if you have a very specific explanation of how molecules work together to do all this thing, and that explains. So basically, our explanations are becoming broader,
right,
and more specific. Enter quantum physics.
right.
And so one thing doesn't work out there and it fucks the entire system. And so therefore the good argument is the one that is very vulnerable. God is the least vulnerable argument because you never need to explain anything. Mysterious God, we're lazy.
Exactly.
I agree. But it's not lazy. It's that we don't, it's the people, it's when we don't know any better, we have to have an explanation because we are made out of stories.
Exactly. We're made of stories, so we have to do it. But here's the thing. The problem with the God story is that how many times has, like, even with when my kid came up to me and said, why does fire make light, right? I
love that question.
The choice one is, well, because God, right? And what does that do? He goes, oh, because God. And that answers the question. And it also says, you don't ask any questions about that because God, right?
Yeah.
The other answer is I could give him the scientific explanation, which I did. And I'm also quick to say this might not be exactly correct, but this is when people that sit and think about this is the closest that we can figure out of how it actually works. It's actually really interesting to look up. You should look it up. It took me a long time to figure out.
There may be a deeper answer that explains it in a more complex way that we don't understand. That means that our explanation is actually technically wrong because we're connecting the wrong things. But when you find that deeper answer, this answer still works.
Yeah.
So
you're talking about God. God still works
with the thought of fire. No,
okay.
I'm talking about the scientific answer. The answer you gave him. When science eventually goes deeper and discovers the particles that we can't see, whatever it is that we don't know yet, that explanation of fire, it's gonna be like, oh my gosh, it's so funny, but it makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you're looking from that perspective, it still makes sense. Whereas you light a fire and you get shadows cast on the cave wall, and you're like, well, God makes that happen because this is how fire works because God made it work this way. And then one day you light a fire and there's no shadows on the wall, and you're like, what? And it's like, well, that's because God, evil, something happened. God's not whatever. It makes it so easy. Whereas if it's the scientific explanation and you're like, well, when you enough heat creates a chemical reaction that causes these particular particles to separate, and that energy is expressed in the certain type of energy that our eyes pick up and perceive as light. Then all of a sudden that fire is burning and there's no shadows dancing, and your son says, what gives? And you're like, well, we were wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So
back to the drawing board.
The point of that is, so the third option is to just say, I don't know, or just not answer, right? But the worst answer in all of those, because if I say, I don't know, or I don't give him an answer, then he's going to go, well, maybe I'll find out myself someday, right? Well, it doesn't close the door.
But if you say God,
if I say God did it, then it closes the door. There's no reason for him to go down that route anymore. Right?
Yeah.
And I think, like, just imagine how much, well, actually, let me back up. You know how much, like, time and money and thought goes into, like, building better weapons in our society, right? Just imagine for over the course of 3,000 years, how much time and effort has gone into killing people, other people, right?
Yep.
And then think, what if we could just pluck all of that time and all of those resources and money and just put them on the bush of, like, making people's lives better? Where would we be today? Right?
That is mind-boggling to think about.
Yeah. But just with the same trajectory, what if we took all of the time that people thought were given that answer because God, and just plucked it off of the bush and just put it into the science, like learning about your environment bush, what would that do, right? So
because Orlo,
go ahead.
Because the truth is that in that situation where you're coming from a scientific perspective, and every single time that you've had a fire, it's cast shadows, and this time it is not casting shadows, you're not going to say, I was wrong, because every other time it worked. So you're going to say, why did it not work this time? Because there's a logical explanation. And to me, whoever the fuck God is, there's still a logical explanation. God does not, like, God creates the laws, and then the laws work. And if you don't understand it, it just means you don't understand it yet. Right. It doesn't mean there's something wrong. It doesn't mean anything else.
So Carl Sagan once, what was the quote? I'm going to misquote this, but essentially he said...
I've misquoted everything I've said so far, so don't worry.
He essentially said something along the lines of, God is like a blanket that we cast over things that we don't understand, right?
Yes.
And so we just say, oh, I don't know God, right? And it fixes things. So
because I said so.
From a 30,000 foot view, when I was like still trying to wrap my head around all this stuff, I was kind of like, religion, and I'm going to say religion, not God, but religion, the idea of what humans do as far as God goes, has been responsible for more atrocities, more suffering, more destruction, and more internal strife, in my opinion, than any other thing that has ever, any other concept that has ever existed. And I believe that it's a man-made concept, that humans could live without it. And at the same time, it's a massive, massive waste of effort and thought. Like all the time that people have thought about, like argued over, like what is going on in a, like, you know, the whole like angel, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin argument, right? That actually wasn't a thing that actually existed. But there was a text that was, and this is Rome, I believe. So I think it was in Rome, or no, this was in like medieval times. There was some letter that somebody had wrote, an ancient person had wrote, that basically was talking about Jesus, and they used the word, it was a Greek word, I don't remember exactly what it was, and they used it for God, and they said, is the exact same as, and they were talking about Jesus, and they used the same word, but this time, it was a handwritten letter, it had an I in it. Like in amongst the vowels, there was an I in there. And that argument lasted for 60 years, caused multiple wars in multiple cities, created riots in the streets, dethroned a king, had multiple bishops beheaded. And
because of one letter difference.
And it was, and you know the phrase. The Greek term for an I is iota, not one iota difference. That's the phrase we use today. That's where that came from. That phrase, not one iota difference, that came from that stupid war that lasted for 2/3 of a century between giant groups of people and killed thousands, hundreds of thousands of people.
And you're saying the war was based on the spelling of that?
Yep. Arguing over religious text. It wasn't just the spelling. It was whether God and Jesus are the same thing.
Sure.
Based off of,
and I mean, I've seen communities of people divide themselves over something as mundane as what colors you're allowed to wear on your body in your clothing.
Yep. Because of religion, right?
But I don't think it's because of religion. I think that the religion is just another one of the symptoms. Okay, for instance, the comparison that comes to mind is you go to the gym and you work out at the gym every day and it sucks, and you're going to this place and you're running on a fucking treadmill, like there's nothing happening, you're not accomplishing anything.
Right.
And then you go out and you win gold in the whatever. Well, all of that time, to me, the argument about religion is wasted is like all of that money that's spent, all of the time, like that happened because there's no other way that humans could process what they're dealing with and come to a place where we are now, where wherever that is, but freaking quantum computers are being invented, and like I am seeing people let go of this of the religious divisive aspect, and they're diving into the political, so it's still religious because now it's all gender and politics and all this other stuff, and it's all doing the same thing and causing the same wars and hatred and all that stuff, but it's just the symptoms of human consciousness becoming aware of itself and figuring out what the fuck it's here for and what the fuck it's doing, and there's no other way to do it. And so the only way that we could get to where we're going to be after this is to go through this. Just like the only way we could get to here is to go through all of the horrible wars and all of the evilness.
Right. I'm not trying to defend where Christianity has been. I'm just trying to plant a seed to anyone who is religious today, to just plant a seed and say, is this worth my effort? Is this worth my life to have this conversation often over and over and over again, especially when the consequences are, on a whole, in my humble opinion, not a bonus for society. Right?
And to me, the person that is out there on his holy crusade is a person that is trying to process trauma and confusion inside themselves. It's never about the person they're looking at, because all they do, I look at you and I see a reflection of myself. And so if there's something about you that bothers me, it's actually just something about me that bothers me.
Right.
Which is just a different way, really, kind of maybe of saying what you're saying, but
yeah. Well, yeah. Exactly. So let's move on to God. We've kind of beat up religion.
Great.
Do you want? Do you want to circle back on anything?
No, I don't work like that, Orlo.
Okay.
If I don't circle back right in this second, I lose it. That's just how my brain works, bro.
So,
like, I typed into Chat GPT I sent that to you, Chat GPT, and I was just like, because to me, I'm just like, I'm curious what comes out of me, but I don't know. I'm just exploring, and I'm just like, what would you say? What would you ask? And well, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, I mean, we should maybe read through those and kind of,
if we have time, if it comes to it, fantastic. If not, I just like to think, you know, whatever. It's already informed some of the conversation. So it gave me a new perspective to think about a couple things. I mean, AI is such a terrifying subject to most people, and I'm realizing there's nothing terrifying about it.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons, but that's a different topic, which I can't wait to have.
I'm still not quite there, but
yep. Well,
so
I can tell you why I feel that way sometime.
Okay, let's not get too far off subject.
Let's talk about God.
Go to hell. That's a religious phrase.
I don't want to go to hell. Let's talk about God, quick.
Okay, so going to God, right? So that put me on the trajectory of being an agnostic. Like I was like, okay, I believe in, well, I don't believe in any of these religions, right? But here's the crux that I had was the same thing you just talked about, right? Like, well, where does everything has a beginning, right? So where do humans start? Well, where's the beginning, right? And then where did if you go look at evolution, right? So you had this branch off of a monkey species or a ape, right? This branching, and then another branching and another branching. Here we are. We're humans, right? But
maybe aliens DNA entered it every once in a while and had a little effect on evolution. Exactly. I don't know, whatever. But yeah.
But you keep going back, you get to your primordial goo that you were talking about, and life spring, and that's a hard one to wrap your head around. It's really good. It's a really great answer to say, well, God, right? But I don't do that anymore, right? So
because there are Christians that say, oh yes, evolution, but God magic wanded it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that anymore. I don't know the answer of what made that primordial goo go into life mode, but I don't believe it was God. I believe it was just the right circumstances at the right time. But then you go back.
I mean,
go ahead.
And the problem with me is my brain is saying, well, the right circumstances at the right time is literally the definition of God in that discussion. Like, to me, God is not some sort of a bearded, a conscious being that's saying,
right,
okay, let's see here. The timer countdown, 3, 2, 1. All right. Enact evolution. Here we go.
Exactly.
It's not like that. It is the whole process itself, everything involved, and the human perspective, trying to understand it, and consciousness becoming aware. All of that is what God is. And so essentially, offense alert, I'm God. You're God. We're all God. We're just a piece of it. You are what God looks like in this point of time, in this place of space. You're what God thinks like. That's how I see God, which is probably just as offensive as your perspective. You know what I'm saying?
No, that's super compelling. If I was going to say, if I had to choose a God, if I had to say that God exists, I would say it's you and it's me.
Yeah.
Right.
And so when I'm talking to a person who says Jesus Christ is the answer, I'm just like, it makes sense that God at this place and time would feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
It's just as valid because they are just as much God as I am.
Right.
We're all made out of God. We're all light photons spinning around each other for no reason, just having fun. And so therefore, why God is because it's who we are. There's
right. Yeah.
And if you look at it as a bearded being in the sky, all that means is that there are things that are happening that you can't process inside yourself. And this is the model that helps you process it. And therefore, what you're looking at is really there. It isn't what you think it is, because when I look at it, it looks different. But it's not what I think it is, because when you look at it, it looks like that. It's just like, it's really there.
Yeah.
It's just that we fight because we feel like if I don't see the same thing you're looking at, that means one of us is fucking wrong.
Right.
But you know the term on the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
Well, what I've been finding out as I've been flipping coins over and over and over is that there's only one coin. And it has infinity sides, and everybody is looking at the same thing. You take science, you take religion, you take hospitality, you take any topic in any way you want, and if we dig into it to the foundational elements, where did it come from? Try to get to the beginning. Eventually, it will all get back to the same thing. We're just looking at a different window, different side. Oh, from this side it looks like this. From this side it looks like this. It's all the same thing. Which to some people feels like nihilism. It feels hopeless, but to me, it's the opposite.
Yeah, I have felt and believed those exact same things. Everything you just said, that's what I would say that I've felt for the majority of my adult life. Right.
Your agnostic version.
My agnostic version. Yep.
Yeah,
sure, you've got a God, that can be your God. You've got a God, that can be your God. My God is essentially energy. It's energy that holds the world. You have a little different version of it, like a photon.
I'm not saying that, Orlo.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying you have your God, I have my God. I'm okay, you're okay.
You're saying it's all.
I'm saying you actually see something that's there, and you're describing it the way it looks to you.
Yeah.
You're not making it up.
Yep.
Nobody made this up for you. This is you're actually seeing something that's there. When you see an angel and you talk to Michael the Archangel, and he tells you to go to India and start preaching Christ in the slums of whatever, all of that actually happened. What is it? It's not what you think it is. It's not what I think it is, but it did happen because you experienced it as an experiencing, like you are God experiencing itself. So to me, your God is just as real as my God. Or non-God.
Yeah.
It's just that we're both looking at something that looks different because we're on different edges of it.
Yeah. So my crux, the reason I was agnostic, was after you get past the primordial goo and you keep going back, and there's the Earth was created, the solar system was created, the galaxies were created, and they're all pushed out from this Big Bang, right? And then you're like, well, what caused the Big Bang, right?
Or medium continuous bang.
Right, exactly. You say, well, maybe it was just two atoms that smashed together, right? Or they just happened to bump into each other wrong, or the right amount of friction was created, or whatever it was, and then that created an explosion, right? There's probably an explanation for it, but the question is, what caused the friction? What caused the bump in the night? What if so? No matter how far back you travel, whether it's like, oh, it's a continuous cycle of something from before, right? It doesn't matter because something started that cycle. Something created a beginning, right? Go ahead.
Are you saying that as your perspective, or are you setting up an argument? Okay.
So that was what I believe. That was what deep down. That's how I was like, well, I believe that a spark created everything, and that spark moved out and has created everything that we see around us, and it is essentially like this energy that flows through everything, and that's that. But something had to actually make the action of starting the first start, right? And you've actually made reference to this book multiple times, The Flatland, right?
Love it.
So I read that book years ago, and it was in Flatland that I actually had kind of the beginnings of a revelation about how I think about this whole problem, right? And it's not like it's an interesting book because it requires you to think about like the flat plane, right? It's hard. It's even as a person who understands the second plane, it's really, really hard to wrap your head around what things would look like in 2 dimensions, right? So much
to look outside of the eyes of somebody that exists inside of 2 dimensions and cannot access the third.
Right. It's so incredibly hard to wrap your head around. I mean, there's a whole book is just trying to explain it to you, right? And at the end of it, you're like, I think I got it. I think, right? But it also, so in that book, it's kind of a almost like a comical part. He comes across Lineland. Do you remember that part of the book?
Yep.
He comes across Lineland, and he's talking to the king of Lineland, right? And Lineland can't fathom his world, can't fathom Flatland, right? And assumes there's no place he can be but in front of him or behind him, right? And he gets in like a little argument with him, right? Because he's like, no, I'm over here. And he's like, no, you're not. You are in front of me or behind me. I'm the king of Flatland. I know everything in Flatland from the front to the back. You know, so which one are you, right? And then he goes to Dotland. Do you remember that?
Pointland, yep. Or Dotland, yeah.
And Pointland, the point is like, I am God, right?
Isn't life great?
Everything, right? And he says something, and he goes, and the dot says, why did I say that?
Why did I just have that intrusive thought?
That's an interesting thing for me to do, right? Right. Okay.
And it's like, wow, I'm so wonderful. I just made up this whole other thing. I'm so great.
Yeah.
So funny, dude. That's awesome.
So that was kind of the beginning. And then they talk a little bit about the fourth dimension, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And
because he's like taking umbrage with the third dimension guy and being like, well, you just managed to show me the third dimension. I believe it now. So now show me the fourth.
Right. Exactly. And
the third dimension guy.
Yeah. And that thing is from the fourth. The entity is from the fourth dimension, right?
Oh, yeah. But the third dimension, or is it the fourth dimension guy that's like, oh, there's no more dimensions? Like nobody believes that anything above them can be possible. Exactly. Again.
Right? So that's actually, so I think about it from this perspective. Like we as humans have to have a beginning. It feels good deep down in our hearts, right? And I think that maybe there is a beginning. But I think that beginning, which I don't think is like, I highly doubt is what I consider a beginning that I could even understand or comprehend. I think that
as a point dweller.
Yeah, exactly. I think that beginning
it could have come from as many reasons that are possible, right? Or there wasn't a beginning. There was just an always, right? And because it's like fleas on the back of a dog, like trying to understand why the ground kept moving around, right? It's really hard to even fathom it, right? I personally have never been. I've seen a lot of things. I have never seen with my own eyes a miracle that couldn't be explained with science. Okay? And I've met a lot of people that claim to have seen miracles with their own eyes, but I've also met people that lie. So one of the differences between how you think about God and how I think about God is I know people lie. And so I don't just blindly trust somebody when they say, "Oh, I saw a flying spaghetti monster," which I've actually met a man who believed that a flying spaghetti monster came to him. And as much as I would like to believe him, I just don't. And until
Why not? Why not?
Because I haven't seen it with my own eyes. But
what if you believe it in a different way? What if you look at it as we are made out of stories? If you tell me anything about yourself, I could, from some perspective, prove that it's not true. You can prove anything you want to because we're made out of stories.
Well, you are a figment of my imagination, and so is the entire world, right? We can go down that path. We can spend.
Yeah, and solipsism is a very refutable position easily, but
here's the thing: you can go down any path you want. You can believe anything you want, anything, right? But in my opinion, it is. And if that's the route you want to go down, if you want to live in Narnia, then live in Narnia, right? If that's the route you want to go down. Go ahead.
My question for you is, just because it's different for you, just because you haven't seen it, just because you perceive it different, why does that make what they see wrong? What if both are right?
It's not wrong.
What if the flying spaghetti monster is actually real? You've never seen it because you're just not open to that frequency or whatever, or maybe you have seen it. And if you could actually see the vision that he's trying to explain instead of hear his words, you'd be like, "Oh my God, I know exactly what you're talking about." It's actually just an emotion, dude. But his brain is processing it as a flying spaghetti monster. So why discount it? Why say, "Nope, I can't see it. You can't prove it to me scientifically, so it's wrong." To me, that's the same fallacy that religion has.
No, I'm not saying it's wrong.
I thought that's exactly what you said.
No.
What do you mean then?
I'm saying that
Okay, you say I don't believe it. I don't believe it. To me, okay, I'm rephrasing. Yes, you are correct. I'm saying, why can't you? Why instead you're choosing to look at it in a binary way? Again, I'm just saying my perspective. You're choosing to look at it in a binary way when what you could do is step out of all of the religion, atheism included, and say, I know that you're right. I know that you see something, and I believe that you're sincere and honest, and you're doing the best you can with what you have. I have no idea what you're talking about, and I know I've never experienced it. Big deal. I know that whatever. Great.
So here's your answer.
Okay.
The answer is once again binary. Why do that? Right?
Why do what?
Why go down that route? Why believe in the spaghetti monster? Why believe in any of it? Right?
But that's what religion says too.
Oh.
Why anything that doesn't make sense to me? Every human is going to say, why do that? It doesn't make sense to me. Well, this human is a sovereign God particle that there's a reason they see it that way. So I guess my question is, why not? If that's how it looks to them, then why not?
The answer is it's a waste of time. It's a waste. Here's
again.
Why. So if
it takes them to where they need to be, how is that a waste? How do you get to decide that?
They can do anything they want. It's a waste of my time to believe them. Right?
But what if there's another option between this binary, I have to either believe you or not believe you? What if you can say, I know that you see something that's actually there. Even if you're in a mental ward, I know that what you see is actually there. Even if it's not there in the way you think, who cares? That's not my task. That's not my business, because I see things that you don't see.
Right.
So I'm just saying, I feel like you have a bit of a binary approach, and I'm wondering, why do you feel like it's not safe for you to accept that can be true and what you believe can be true? They both can be true.
So if I take a drink of...
Not in the way you think, not in the way he thinks.
If I take a drink of water, right?
Yeah.
This is an empty cup. But if I took a drink of water...
Good idea.
Just a second. I'm going to get one too.
Smart.
If I take a drink of water, I know through my own senses, even if it's imaginary, that it quenches my thirst. It feels good to me. It makes me
Is that
feel
coconut water?
alive. This is a sparkly water. We call it spicy water. We're at the studio. That's what we saw. I know that it makes me feel good. It makes my life better, even if it's imaginary, right? Even if it's just me just making the connection between it, and this could be anything, right? Or it doesn't exist at all, and then I'm just a floating blob like the Matrix. I'm a floating, brain in a bowl of soup, and I just imagine that drinking water will make me feel good. That's fine. It makes my life better. But me giving any, unless I'm just feeling like it's a fun route to explore, right? Unless I'm saying, oh yeah, let's talk about whatever, and this is a fun experience. We're playing D&D, right? And it's adding to the moment, then let's explore it. But I am not going to give it clout or explore it if I don't believe it and it doesn't make my life better, right?
That's different than saying it's not true.
I didn't say it wasn't true. I said I don't.
I guess that's fair.
I don't.
I guess that's right, but and then you okay. So okay. Go on.
So what it comes down to, when I think about, I've come to the conclusion, and this is a thing that I have come to, but I personally believe that I will never see God. I will never see an entity, whether it's or I see it all the time and I just don't recognize it as God. But in either case, there's never going to be a time that that my life is going to take a giant left turn because of God, right? Whether I believe in it or not is actually a waste of my time, right? The actual thought of thinking about God is time that I could have spent playing with my kids or thinking about something that would make my life or someone else's life better. But
you don't have to think about it anytime you don't want to.
Well, I know you don't, but
it doesn't diminish the person who believes it.
I'm not saying that it does. I'm talking.
They can
this
still
is
be right.
Entirely me. This is entirely me. My life, I've spent a lot of time thinking about God. But now, at this point in my life, I don't think I'm going to die or kick the bucket anytime soon, but I just realized that all of the time, if you take all of the time that I've thought about God and ideas about God and religions about God, even this whole conversation, it's essentially a waste of my life. It's a time that I could be, if God exists, enjoying God, right? Or if he doesn't exist, enjoying not God. You see what I'm saying? Like the act of thinking about God is actually a waste of your life, in my humble opinion.
Of your life, though, because you keep telling me that it's about you when I'm trying to challenge you on this thing where I'm like, why is it a waste of time? If it's a waste of time for you, then don't do it. But there is something captivating about it for you. There is something about it that draws you. It makes it not a waste of your time to look at these things that feel to you like you need to look at them because this is a big fucking waste of time.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's
if it's just about you, then none of it should take away from you.
It doesn't take away from me. It does. I've actually kind of already made a pact with myself. After this conversation, I'm just gonna not think about God. I mean, I probably will, but I'm gonna.
Oh boy, are you a betting man?
Huh? Oh, I will.
Are you a betting man?
I definitely will.
It's in your blood, brother.
Yeah, I love stories, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
But I'm not going to explore or wonder or think about the origin or the beginning or anything along those lines. I'm not going to spend any more time on it. And I'm not saying that that's true for anyone else. But like I said at the beginning of this, I want to plant the seed, right?
Okay.
That says maybe if you're a person who does spend time thinking about God, you could stop. You could just stop thinking about God, and your life would continue to go on, and you would continue to enjoy, whether you believe he exists or not exists, you would continue to enjoy this life in a perfect way, and you'd have more time and effort to put into things that matter. Drinking water.
That is so interesting, because what you're really saying is life isn't scary. It doesn't need to be serious. We don't really have a purpose here necessarily. Maybe, I have no idea, but
to enjoy
life can be fun. So what are you doing wasting your time on the wars and the internal chaos and what I'm saying is the wars and the internal chaos is the process of enlightenment, let's just say. Like overall human enlightenment, because it's an evolution. Call it evolution. Okay, let's throw that buzzword out. The mental, emotional, spiritual, whatever, evolution, the thought, the evolution of our stories, of our myths. And so to me, since most of the world, almost all of the world, including you, from my perspective, believes in something beyond themselves. To you, it's atheism. To you, it's not God. To you, it's a negative sign, whereas to most people, it's a plus sign. I shouldn't say most people, because there's lots of people who are atheists. And that, I'm sure that doesn't resonate with you, but I'm just saying from where I'm sitting, there's nothing in life that is more beautiful to me than humans. There's nothing that can do the abstract, complex myth. And it's so beautiful and it's so fun. Most of those myths have God in them. Because there's so much we don't understand. And so since the thing I want to do with the rest of my life is look out of other people's windows and record what I see so that everybody can see we're all looking at the same thing. I'm hoping, I believe at the end of the day, that's what I'm doing in many different ways. But the point is, because I opened my eyes one day and I looked around me and I realized this is not a scary universe. There's nothing scary out there.
Nothing.
Everything fits together depending on how you look at it. And so why am I going to look for the scary? Why am I going to look? Why am I going to look for the battle? Because if I look for the battle, I'm going to find it. Have you heard, you've probably heard the saying, I think this was Robert Anton Wilson. He said, as the thinker thinks, the prover proves.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, that you do not believe that you're ever going to see the supernatural being come out of the sky and poof the whatever into the whatever. Right. You're never going to see that. And therefore, from my perspective, you won't. Because as the thinker thinks, the prover always proves.
Right.
And you're always going to believe that everybody who sees it is kooky, is cracked, is not seeing things correctly.
I don't actually think they feel that. I don't feel they're kooky. I feel that they've gone down a different path. I think that they have.
But they're wasting their time because they live in a beautiful universe and they see something that's scary and they're trying to solve it.
That's exactly.
But the truth is,
I'm like, it's kind of sad. Okay, well, have fun with that. I'm going to go be in the park.
Mm-hmm. And so, I feel like I have the same. The reason that God is so interesting to me is the same reason that you're saying I never want to think about God again, because we live in a joyful universe, and you want to influence the world around you to lay their baggage down, open themselves up to the healing that comes when you just look around you and you say, you know what? Everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. And I know that because it is that way. And everything fits. Right. Everything's okay. Here we go. Let's have some fun. And to me, I look around me and I see a world that is, it's a Garden of Eden. It's paradise. It's beautiful in every possible way, depending on how you look at it. And most of the world looks at it as fucking terrifying. And I'm just like, hey, everybody, let's look under this rock. Let's see what we can find under here. And everyone's like, ah! And I'm like, oh, no, look. It's so cute. It's so cute. Yeah, exactly. It's squirmy. And, oh, yeah, it bites a little bit. You know, there's things, whatever. But this is why. And it all makes sense. And then everyone's like, oh. And then you're like, look, everybody, nothing's even there at all. Like, it's all the same purpose. Yeah. And so I fucking love your why for this whole conversation, what you're doing in every part of it. And it's a whole different side of the coin.
Right. Basically the same place, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But with just a different perspective.
Yeah. So, to me, I can't even go as far as the beginning. Like, I am a human that's made out of stories, and my stories don't have the bandwidth to even get close to a beginning. But in the beginning, God, Big Bang, all matter in the universe. We went through the one cycle. In the beginning of this cycle, how about that? In the beginning of the cycle we're in now, all the matter in the universe came together into a singularity where it was an infinite amount of, like, a matter contracted into an infinitely small space. And that singularity, in that singularity it's infinite. It's infinity. So in that singularity, that Big Bang, everything that could ever happen with all of the energy and anything that's inside there, because matter is not actually real. It's energy in a different form. Infinity means everything at the same time. And I mean, it depends, whatever. But So every possible thing, you actually are standing on the moon right now. Because infinity says that every single thing that could possibly happen happens. And in my mind, that singularity, everything, like, we are in the moment of the Big Bang right now, and every possible timeline that could have ever happened is happening concurrently, including our past and our future in the timeline we are personally in, our consciousnesses are in, because time doesn't flow like a river like we think of. It's just a series of snapshots that our brains wire themselves, or God wired them to flow it together, blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. We get way off in the weeds. I love talking about that stuff. But as part of every possible thing that could possibly happen, the human consciousness happened, animal consciousness happened, and any consciousness, the nature of consciousness is that it makes the little light particle pick a polarization. Consciousness actually makes a invisible speck of nothing choose a side. It wouldn't have chosen the side without the consciousness. This is science. This is all like obviously provable. Like 1 + 1 = 2. And so therefore, we are in the moment of the Big Bang. Every timeline, everything that could possibly happen is happening and has happened and will happen, but it's all in one single moment. And the only reason that we can see it at all, that it is perceivable in a physical, that I can touch this texture and is because I'm observing it. Is because I am forcing these light particles to make a decision about what they're doing, simply because I'm looking at it. So the idea that if I walk out of the kitchen and no one's in the kitchen, does the kitchen become what's the word for quantum? Like, does it enter the quantum realm? And so it actually no longer exists. It could be any kitchen. It could be any form of that kitchen on any timeline. And then when my consciousness observes it, that is what makes it become what I see. That's the only thing that makes it become what I see. Other than that, it's everything, everywhere, all at once. And so, how the fuck do you explain that? And to me, that's God. To me, that's the whole thing. And it's all tongue in cheek because holy shit, this is way outside of my ability to comprehend. But that's what makes sense to me of what actually is happening.
So what you're explaining is you have a hypothesis, right? And it's the going hypothesis of that's the going
pop science,
like quantum hypothesis, right?
And it's all made up math numbers and ideas and things like that. Sure.
And it's and it is good that people continue to go down that route. And I'm glad that there are people that are smart and really dig into those kinds of things. And
I'm not smart, but I'm curious, and so I really dig into it.
And I kind of generally like a 50 or 30,000 foot view of like kind of looking at it and like reading article now and again, just to kind of,
because anything closer turns into abstract chaos for me.
Right.
Like you'd have to be a particle physicist to be able to make sense of the closer views.
Exactly. But then I just don't think about it anymore. In the same way that I don't think about, like, there are theories on how data analyst theories and like the way that data should be like taken in and looked at and dug through, right? There are whole theories, or like AI, like how to train AI, right? You could spend your entire life learning about it, right? You could spend your entire being, essence, devoted to that problem. And I think that it's great that some people do devote their essence to that. I'm glad for those people. I'm glad for the cosmic scientists. I'm glad for all the people that do the deep digging. But I personally am not going to spend the time on those hypotheses as well.
That's why I just read the book of the summation. Exactly. I just read a book called by Sean Carroll, the biggest ideas in the universe.
Oh, I don't think I've read it.
It's mostly math equations that are numbers and a hat and an imaginary zebra stripe in the left side of it. It's just like it's math without numbers. It's just it's so abstract, but it's real. Sean Carroll is from what I understand, he is a leader in the scientific world. Like,
interesting. What's the name?
He's not someone that's Sean Carroll, the biggest ideas in the universe.
Oh, interesting.
I think that's what it's called. But so I read through all of that. I read that. I listened on Audible. I listened to that book, not being able to understand actually what he's saying, but just following along. And he takes such a simple step-by-step approach through it, so that in the middle of the book, when he kind of does and then launches on this very short little extrapolation of all this stuff, that's what I could understand. And all of the stuff I had listened to before that gave me confidence that he's not just that it's not just the bearded god of judgment, that he's now creating another one to explain something. He's actually saying, this is what the math that we have, the current math that we have, actually tells us. And although it's not provable, it is not provable. The reason it's a good argument is because there is nothing in known science that disproves it. That's the best you can do for a good argument. As long as there's nothing that disproves it, everything that it shows actually makes sense, then it's a good argument for now. And eventually, we're going to find a better argument. We're going to find the deeper argument that explains it from a much deeper level. Then we'll understand how all of that was circumstantial. There's a bunch of circumstantial stuff here, but it isn't wrong. There's a reason why everything works that way. So to me, it's just like, okay, I don't need to understand that math. I don't need to do the time. It's just fun for me to just look out of these portholes and see the view of the cosmos that's around me, because it's nothing I could have imagined. Same with you.
Yep.
That's the why. It's so fun, dude. And I have no time for the math and the study and no. This is all I want to do with it.
That's my argument. Don't spend the time. Just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Orlo, you and I agree completely from my perspective.
Yeah.
We're here that means we're where we're supposed to be. And I think we're here to experience whatever is and just enjoy.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
I wonder, does Angela have anything to add? Does she have any questions?
I'm sure she does. She's not here.
Oh, she's not here. Okay.
No. Oh, dude, should I scan through this Chat GPT thing really quick?
Sure.
Just because why not?
Sure.
Dude, this AI stuff is so interesting to me because you can, it interacts as a human, drawing from a pool, an almost unlimited pool of consciousness and thought models and all this stuff, and it comes up with super unique stuff. So basically, I was like, what questions would you ask on the topic of why God anyway? What would you ask Orlo? What would you ask me? And it was kind of interesting, some of the stuff it came up with, I think. But let me see. What are some ideas? Do you see the world as a place of joy and love or something else?
Yes.
We've already, obviously. Okay, I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Oh. What does your window show you that you think I might not see? But I think we've come to the end of this and kind of realized that, I mean, that's what I realize at the end of it every time, is that we're looking at the same thing from different views. But actually, how would you answer that?
I would say that it's the window that's an interesting question from ChatGPT, first off. I would say the biggest thing is just, it's a time thing. Like, time is the biggest resource. The only unreplenishable resource. It's actually it's what money is. Money is just a way that we can barometer time, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
And we only have a certain amount of it, right? And so yeah. I guess the thing is just don't waste your time. And I think that you already are at the spot of just enjoying it. But what I guess I'm saying, the difference maybe even still is that I'm just going just solely for the enjoyment without any of the question, I guess.
Yes. What else? Okay, here's another one that may be interesting. Never mind. If you could step into another worldview for a day, what would it be? Whatever. I don't care. Why would you step into another worldview? If you could step into another worldview for a day, you would.
Yeah.
If you wanted to, you would.
Yeah.
Yeah. What would it be? The one I have right now. Because what else? Okay. Is there an ultimate reality beyond what we perceive? That would be kind of a good question. Is there reality beyond what we perceive?
I think there is. But once again, I think that unless someone breaks through the fourth wall, literally the fourth dimension, and starts interacting with me and starts picking people up out of the street and flinging them around, it's not going to matter to me. So there's no reason to give any thought, because I can't imagine it. I can't prepare for it. So in that case, it's why spend any time on it?
Okay, how do you feel about the quantum physics perspective that observation, in fact, affects reality itself? How do you feel about that?
It's the same thing. I think it's super interesting. It's a really
and that's just God again.
It's fun concept.
Does that feel like God, though? Does that feel like it's more of the same God thing that you're like, well, there's a waste of time?
Yeah, exactly. Because it will not affect, it literally will not affect me and my life on a day-to-day basis forever, by definition. Because the moment I see it or sense it in any way, then it's locked in, right? The whole cat, right? When you open the box, cat. When you're going through life, all you're doing is opening box, and you never can look into the closed box.
No, you're only going to see in the open box.
You only see in the open box, so it doesn't even matter. Yes. It's not even worth thinking about.
Okay, so and from my perspective, the idea that observation directly affects reality creates reality even, I'll go that far.
Sure.
To me, that is where that is where joy, like that told me, what that tells me is that the things that I feel, because everything is emotional to me. And so when I see that example in the physical world, and I immediately realize that everything I experience in here is simply the story I'm telling myself. It is my perception of it that is creating it. And if that's true in the emotional world, why would that not be true in the physical world? To me, because the way I see it is, it's all just repeating patterns, as big as you go and as small as you go. So why would it not be? And to me, that is the foundation. That is an easy foundation that somebody that's afraid can say, oh, maybe I am safe. Maybe I'm just telling myself stories. Maybe the world, and so what? So what that I will never be able to look inside a closed box. Just the knowledge, just knowing that the math says that when that box is closed, that cat is both dead and alive and is not in there.
Right.
All of those are actually happening. Math says that's true. If you look at a small enough particle,
Right.
you can't do these tests on a cat, but we're extrapolating because that's what math and science does. That's what theories are, or
Right.
whatever word you used. That's not a theory. But to me, what that means is that I am safe, that everything is exactly the way it's supposed to be. I live in a joyful universe, and it is whatever the fuck I want it to be.
Yeah, I do believe in so like the whole idea of manifestation, right? And that's something that Kay and I have been like playing with, the idea of manifestation, right? And that's going back to Schrodinger's cat. The manifestation is essentially, like, you can think of it from another perspective, like, in this box is a cat, right? And then you open the box. That act, I believe, does change it, right? Now, I don't know the science behind it. I don't know the math behind it, but I do know that it does seem to have an effect, right? But I wouldn't put it on God either, because when you buy a yellow Volkswagen Bug, and it's the only one in town, all you're going to see driving your Volkswagen Bug is yellow Volkswagen Bugs for the next 4 months, right? Because your brain is looking for Volkswagen Bugs. They exist.
Which is what is called synchronicity in pop metaphysical science. Pop metaphysics,
right?
yeah.
But in my opinion, there's no magic and there's no God in that. It's just, that's what you are. I believe in manifestation, in that you essentially tune in to something, but that's something that you are actively doing, and you are,
Is it possible that your aversion to the concept of God is because in your subconscious, the only way you can think of God, the only thing God means to you is some version of a bearded God of justice or a many-armed God of whatever, all the myths. And what if consciousness itself is the expression of God, is God?
Well, I think that, possibly I do have an aversion to it, but the aversion would be, why don't we just call it consciousness and not call it God? Like,
what if we change how we feel God means? What if God is not something that has a will, that has an agenda? God has no agenda. Nature doesn't have an agenda. Nature exists because it exists, because it could not but exist given all of the physical conditions, the physics.
Then why don't we call it nature?
Because we live in a world that has come from where it has come from, and most of the world looks at it as God in some way or the other, and they're still trying to process it. So why don't we use terminology that makes sense to people to start changing that gut foundation of what it is? Just
well, I see where you're going, but why don't we also call nature darkness and give it those characteristics, right? Why don't we make it evil? Why don't we make it anything, right?
We do all of that. Let's go on a journey. We can find anyone with any perspective,
right?
And it's all just human consciousness, which is God.
Exactly. But to me, that's a waste of my life, right?
Okay.
To me,
that's fair enough.
I just call it like A is A, I'm just going to say, if it's nature, if it's a tree, I'm just going to say it's a tree. I'm not going to try to make it into something it's not, right? And I'm not going to spend a bunch of time. My ultimate argument is don't waste your life on it. Like, enjoy the tree
because
for
you don't
being
need
a
this.
tree.
You don't need the safety of having a higher power explanation. And I'm saying, what if people think of God as a higher power just because they don't have any other way to process this? They've never learned it. They don't have the tools. And having somebody say, well, I don't believe it because I don't see it. Well, now they just have shut themselves off completely. Whereas if it's like, okay, I can step into your perspective and I can understand, because now I'm stepping into a story. I'm just stepped into a fantasy world, and I'm going to walk through this fantasy world with you, because I know it's all interesting, because all of it is fun. All of it is beautiful. And if I see something scary, like a war based on Christianity or Muslim or whatever, it's not actually scary. There's a reason it's happening. And the reason is because all of these emerging consciousnesses can't figure out what is happening. It's like you wake up and you don't know who you are or where you are. Everything is going to be scary because you have no basis. That's basically what we are as a race, as a consciousness.
Yeah.
Global consciousness. We are waking up being like, what the fuck is going on? I don't care how scientific or religious you are, you don't know what's going on.
Well, that's true. But okay, I'm glad you brought this up.
Good.
If we're being imaginative and we're having fun talking about a tree being a god, or we're talking anything, right? We're talking about, but everyone understands that it's fiction and we're playing with the idea. That's one thing. But I actually think that one of the most evil things a person can do is to tell somebody essentially a lie, right?
Yeah.
So if you're like, can't you see that tree glowing, right? And I'm like, are you referring to the sun glancing off of it? And they're like, no, like God's glowing. I'm not going to say yes, because if I say yes and I don't see it, if I do see it, then I'm going to say it, right? But if I see light glancing off of a tree, I'm not going to say yes, because, or if they start going into, that's kind of a really vanilla explanation, but if they start going into if I start exploring what they believe, but I don't believe it, right? I just don't see it and don't believe it, and there's none of my senses, there's nothing that tells me that it's true except for their own words. I believe it is a disservice to them for me to give a second opinion on what they're believing, because there are people that are just straight up crazy and die of starvation and smashing their head into walls because of what they believe, because someone at some point fed into that and created that. And you could say,
but Orlo,
what's that?
But if this is not a scary universe and everything is because there's no other way it could be, then that also is not scary. It also is not a waste. It also is because it could not be any other way. And if they did not go through that process, then I mean, they have to, because there's no other way to do it. And it's all beautiful and it all fits. What about that? We're getting into some abstract weeds.
Well, I'm just trying to think of how I want to talk about it. Like, not what is good and what is bad, right? And in my opinion, life is good, right? And to sin, like, if you want to put a big word out there, my definition of sin is to anything that is anti-life, right? Anything that destroys life on a
You're saying that plants can sin?
Yeah. Wait, does a plant destroy life?
Hell yes.
How?
Nature destroys and builds. It's all balance. You can't have creation without destruction. It's not it's impossible.
Without the I'll put it caveat on there. Without reason, without personal selfish gain in your own life. So like a tree that chokes out another tree to live,
it doesn't have a choice. It's not choosing to do that. It just does.
Right. It does not sin. A human that eats when he needs to, even if it means that someone else won't eat, that's also not sin.
What if it means that somebody else will be eaten?
Give me the context.
What a human that eats when he needs to, even if it means he's eating another human, is that sin?
Nope. Not if that person is
okay. That's consistent.
That's dead.
Yeah, sure.
If that person killed that person, that's a sin.
Okay. So would you say then you feel like sin? So sin can only be committed against something else that is self-aware?
No.
Sin can only be sin. No. It can only be sin if it is something committed by something self-aware against something self-aware.
No, because if you are cutting down an entire rainforest for the sake of cutting down a rainforest and watching it burn, that's a sin.
That's a highly subjective statement.
Yeah.
Obviously for a lot of reasons. And so now we're kind of back to religion again, because there's a whole raft of situations where your idea of why someone's doing something is different than their idea of why they're doing it. And to them, okay, for reference, so I'm not just beating around the bush. Yeah. My definition of sin is if you believe you should do something and you don't do it, that's sin. If you believe you should not do something, if you know you should not do that and you do it anyway, that's sin. You can only sin against yourself. Okay. You can only sin against yourself. Now, if you go out and you murder somebody else and you believe fully that you should have done that, that's what you should have done. It would be sin not to murder that person. But if that person doesn't really like the idea of you murdering them and they believe they should stop you from murdering them, and so they kill you, or their family comes after you and kills you because that's what they believe, that also is not sin. Like,
so why do you think it's okay to kill that person? Why is it good to kill that person? Why is it not a sin to kill that person?
Well, for instance, if somebody came into my house to fuck with my family, mm-hmm. I would kill them with pleasure.
Exactly.
That's what it took. And so it's not a sin. Now, if I killed that person, it's not a sin. Now, Amish people would say that's a sin. Now, I shouldn't speak for Amish. A pacifist might say that's a sin. But I know it's not a sin because for that pacifist, it would be a sin because they would have guilt. They would feel guilty about it. But to me, it's not a sin. And now if that guy's family found out that I killed him, they don't care why. To them, they can understand it from his perspective. That's where he came from. They're like, and now they come and they take their vengeance. Well, now it's not a sin. Like,
no,
so it's all a matter of my perspective.
Here's the thing.
Okay.
When in the context of you and your someone breaking into your family and you killing them, right? The idea is that they will kill people, right? That is anti-life. You killing him in this hypothetical scenario is pro-life. You're keeping.
But maybe he believes that if he doesn't do that, I'm just saying we could go out on and on. But it's all about your story versus my story. Then what is my perspective of what I'm doing? That's what makes it sin or not.
It's really hard for a society to decide what sin is, but it is not hard for me to decide what sin is for me.
For you.
But that's what I'm talking about in this scenario. We were talking about going back to...
And that's where it gets lost.
Yeah, it's hard for you to judge whether there was a sin, but it's not hard for me to judge whether something is a sin or not, right?
For you, though.
For me. Yeah.
It's impossible for you to judge whether it's a sin for me to walk up to someone on the street and cut their throat.
One of the reasons I dislike religion. It's telling people what are sins and what are not sins, right? Mm-hmm. But going back to the person who believes in something that is that I don't see with my own flying spaghetti monster, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I believe that me telling that person that is a waste of their life. It will send them down a path that could make it so that they are harmed, or they stop believing in reality, quote unquote reality, and therefore die as a result, or have a harder time living as a result, because they are not being fed reality, and the people around them are not feeding them a reality. So I see that giving them fault, like saying, oh yeah, I see that spaghetti monster, right?
When you don't.
When I don't is a sin, because it's taking away from their life or their possible future life.
Sure.
So I just wouldn't do it.
I could see that. Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a flying spaghetti monster. It also is God, right? I've seen people spend tons of, and believing in the bearded man in the sky does not mean that you're going to die of starvation, most likely. However, I do believe personally it is going to rob you of other opportunities. And so me giving a lie, saying at any time, giving something that is not reality as what comes out of my mouth is a sin.
And what I feel like I hear you saying is, I believe that you would. Okay. How about this? Do you feel like if you believed that unless you convinced somebody that you saw a flying spaghetti monster, they were going to suffer a horrific, horrible whatever?
Wait,
even though that's not true.
In the spaghetti monster?
Your job is to convince them that you see a flying spaghetti monster, even though you don't. And if you don't convince them of that, this horrible thing that this trajectory they're on is it's gonna continue. Like, this is the only way to save them. Would it be then, from what I hear you saying, I feel like it would then be a sin for you not to do the very thing that feels like a sin right now?
No,
because it's all about motivation. It's all about what you believe you need what is the right thing for you to do. It doesn't matter if it's right or not from someone else's perspective. If you believe it's right, then for you it's a sin not to do it. If you believe it's wrong, then for you it's a sin to do it, including spending 1 second talking about God that you don't want to talk about. Like, that would be make it a sin for you.
Right. Technically. I also
so sin is in the eyes of the beholder, just like reality. It is created by perception.
I think that my version of sin needs a slight adjustment, in that I should say that it is affecting their life in reality, right?
Yeah.
So, like, with the basis
your version,
in reality, in my version of reality, right? What my senses are telling me. Yep.
Yeah. And your version doesn't need any adjustments. It's perfect just the way it is. And to me, it's just like it is ecstasy for me to explore this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need to come to a conclusion.
My version,
I love the way you think.
My version of reality is wrong. I know that my version of reality is wrong. And
can't help but be.
I know that I will never have the right one. So I live in this.
You're going to have fun in the meantime.
Exactly.
Perfect. I want to read. So I interviewed Logan.
Yeah.
And I texted her because she has just, in that interview, I was just like, she's talking about how she's coming to Christianity. Like, it's such a weird trippy reversal of everything, and it's fascinating to me. So I texted her and I was like, how would you answer this question? Why God anyway? And I just want to read her text if you don't mind. And actually, I don't care if you mind. I'm going to read it anyway. She said, first she's like, what does that mean? Like, why is there a God? Like, I'm confused. And I was like, that's actually interesting answer right there, because from her point, it's like, well, are you asking if, like, right. But then when I clarified, kind of gave her the background of it, she was like, well, she said, I think it's for some explanation of how things work and a sense of security. It's a big, scary world and too big to understand without some explanation and understanding of how it and you got here. It is helpful to know that there is some rhyme or reason for things and something looking out for you, making things the way they are. Otherwise, it's so easy to just feel that you're floating on a rock in space with no purpose whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So, it doesn't really, to me, that was just such an interesting perspective, because it kind of cuts through all the chase and just says, because it feels better.
Yeah. And I get that. But somehow, but
that's not going to start a fucking war.
Right, exactly.
That's not going to take away someone else's sovereignty.
Right.
It's the same thing you and I are both saying. It's a fucking beautiful universe, and this just makes it more like it's as a lens I can look through where I see more of the beauty.
Right. Yeah, that might be the only that's the only why to God, is it makes it easier for you. But
and if it does,
as long as your hand on the trolley lever, that doesn't affect your hand. Right?
Yeah. And as long as you're not trying to use it to take away someone else's sovereignty because you believe that if they see it that way, it makes you less safe.
Yep.
Bro.
Fist bump.
Fuck yeah.
Well,
I appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation, man.
Back at you.
This is what I'm after. So thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully we didn't offend
And you've given me lots of food for thought.
Yeah. Back at you.
What did you say?
I said, hopefully we didn't offend too many people.
Hopefully we did. Some people need to be offended because guess what? It's not a scary universe. And if it's going to offend you that somebody says there's nothing to be scared of.
You know, going back to your sister's text, like the thing that's sad to me about that text is that
wasn't my sister.
Oh, sorry. Logan. It's not your sister.
Logan,
sorry.
Yeah.
The thing about that text it is a little bit sad to me, and the sadness is like I don't know how I came to it, and I don't know how you came to it, but once, like you say the words joyous cosmology, right? If you can
joyful,
if you can get to that point, you don't need it, right?
True.
It's because if you live in a world that doesn't bite, then you can just enjoy it and enjoy the bites.
And if it helps you get to that point, then you do need it. Because getting to that point is ultimately what I'm after.
Right.
Inside myself, and I know the more I get to that point, the more I'm gonna. It's just gonna flow out. It's just that those vibrations of the way I think is going to ripple out from me. That's the way humans are. We are creators. That's another reason why I think we're God, because we literally create every thought we have creates reality around us, and usually it comes out in hand to construction, whatever. But yeah, it's a great perspective.
Yeah.
Thanks, Orlo.
Thank you, sir.
Dude, enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Will do. You too.
We'll talk again.
Yeah, enjoy that cold Northwest.
I'm about to put my jacket back on.
I am not.
Okay.
Well.
And we're off. Unless you have anything else to say.
Nope. I think that's
perfect.
good enough.